Welcome back to I Will Go Down with the Ship. My name is Heather,
And I'm Chelsea.
and we are going to be talking in a little bit about episode 4. But first, Chelsea, why don't we talk about, just do a check in? How are you doing with your writing? That face says everything.
I'm behind, but I also had to do a little bit of emotional recovering
Hmm.
from that last episode that I wrote because
Yeah.
I ugly cried while I wrote that one. And plus the other things on my plate right now that I'm juggling, I have kind of let the episode fall by the wayside. So I've really got to literally after we get off the episode today, I've got to get in the chair and start chapter 10 of this story. And I had one of my writer friends, Brooke Rain, message me last night and she was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you ended that there. I need the next episode immediately." And I was like, "Oops."
Oh, wow. So let me ask you, you process your character's emotions as though they were your own. And so when you write a difficult chapter like that one, would you recommend for people who have that same process to sort of take the time to recover? Or like if everything were ideal and you didn't have anything on your plate, would you kind of jump into the next chapter because you have that emotion or that momentum? Like what would you do in an ideal situation?
I think it depends on the kind of day I'm having, especially with my chronic illnesses.
Hmm.
If I weren't juggling so many different things right now, I might have kept that momentum going and jumped on in to
Yeah,
chapter 10, uh, especially with the way I ended that. Like, you remember how I ended that
yeah,
episode.
yes,
And,
I do.
but I will also be switching point of view back to Roman's point of view. So I've got to,
Yeah, so
get
you kind
back
of
in
need
that
that
headspace.
transition. For sure. Okay, perfect. And so going into this week and your writing, obviously bar none of the things on your plate getting overwhelming, like what is your plan for this week or what are your goals for this week in terms of what do you want to finish when it comes to your writing or accomplish?
I definitely need to get 2 more episodes for Deceit and Desire done. Ideally, I need to get 5 done because I need to get next week's
I was gonna
schedule
say,
too.
don't, where are
But
you going next week, Chelsea?
I'm going on a carnival cruise out of New Orleans
That's
next
so
week.
exciting. That's so exciting.
And yes, I'm a big time carnival girly. I have sailed with Carnival so many times. I have 100 sea days or will have at the end of this trip. I'm halfway to diamond status. I just love Carnival. I love the family atmosphere. The service is always fantastic. And no, I have not been paid to say any of this. I just genuinely love Carnival and would be hard pressed to sail with anybody else because I love them so much. Like
So where, okay, I should probably caveat this. We are about, let's see, episode 4 is going to drop sometime in late July, but when we record this, it is middle of June because we are on top of our shit, guys. Like,
yes.
I don't know if we'll always be on top of our shit, but we are right now. So whatever we talk about, just think it's probably like 4 to 6 weeks in the past. So where are you going on your trip?
We are going to Cozumel and Progresso. And, Cozumel is kind of like a home away from home at this point. I've been so many times and I love it. And we will be doing the Fury Catamaran Sail, Snorkel, and Beach Party excursion, which is always my favorite. I love snorkeling. It's always a good vibe. It's always fun. It's really, honestly, a very affordable, good value for your money excursion,
Mhm.
also. And, it's always just a good time. And one of my favorite bars in the world, the Three Amigos, is in port there in Cozumel also.
Do you find that you get inspired when you're when you're somewhere else that's like not home? I mean, like you're literally leaving from
Oh
New
yeah.
Orleans, and I feel like I've never been there, but like I feel like if I'm in that city, I would get so inspired.
Oh girl, yes. And
Yeah,
I'm gonna drag you to New Orleans with me at some point and we're
yeah,
just
we
gonna
have
stay
to.
for a week. It's
Yeah.
gonna happen. Maybe when I get back into writing my paranormal romances under my CJ Beaumont pen name, which I've been meaning to do for 40 years now, it
It's
feels
been
like.
84 years.
Right. It is. It's it feels like that. But I'm very much a follow the muse kind of person and also my perfectionism is so bad. And then like I look back at the first three books I've released under that pen name in my Bayshore Witch Legacy series, and I see so many things that like I've already fixed these books like three times now, and I'm like, oh my God, there's more. There's more that I want to fix in these before I continue with writing the next one. And I'm just like, oh my God, why do I keep doing this to my readers? Why?
Well, I'm literally the same way. And it sucks because like when I was writing the books at the time, I was like, this is so fun. I love these books. And it's not like I don't love them anymore, but it's like I look back and I see the story and the joy that I had while writing them, but I also see like the mistakes. And I'm just
Right.
like when you're writing now and they're like, oh, what else have you written? I'm going to go look in your backlog. And you're just like, please don't judge me based on a book I wrote 7 years ago. You know what
Right.
I
Like
mean?
there's just at that time we didn't know what we didn't know about craft yet.
Yeah.
And like
Just,
we
yeah.
both worked so hard to learn so much about craft and plot and structure and character and like all of these things and how they all come together in our writing. And like what I'm writing now with Deceit and Desire is I feel
Your
leagues
best, I would say.
better, like
Yeah.
by leaps and bounds than anything else I've ever written before in my life. And it makes me want to go back and fix every single thing I've ever written before this point. But like, do we really have time for me to do that? Because I don't feel like we do.
Well, and also like 7 years from now, you might look back and be like, oh my gosh, I've learned so much more that, so it's almost like I kind of keep them as like tokens of just, okay, look how far you've come and look how much you've
Right.
learned and stuff.
Right.
Um,
And I do just need to like buckle down and start getting my next ones out in my Bayshore Witch Legacy series because it's a 9 book series. I have 9 gorgeous Becky Frank covers for that series.
you need to get
And
that
like
out.
I need to get that out there. Like they're so beautiful. But like those characters are brats also and tend to get ideas of their own and just like set my outline on fire. But like all of my characters do this.
Yeah,
All of
they
my
do.
characters do this.
Mine does too. Like when you were talking about how like you follow the muse. Like usually I'm not that type of person. Like if I need to write something, I'll just be like, oh, I'll add it to the plate. I can write more than one story at one time. But after I watched Fallout for the first time, it was like, oh shit. Like I had to clear everything and I had to write this hockey story that I'm writing right now. And it was like, it's like you said, the muse, it took everything in me. And I was just like, it completely changed the way I usually my process. And it was just one of those things where it's like, and I'm writing it. And like I said, like I love it. I love the story. I love the characters. And I like you, I think it's like one of the best books, if not the best book that I've written, because I don't care. I shouldn't say I don't care, but I'm not listening to what the market says is good. I'm not, it's just about the characters and getting their story the way that they want it to be told. And trust me, like I've sent you messages where I'm just like, Chelsea, I was supposed to do this, but then freaking Cooper decides to go get drunk and whatever. And I'm just like, what do I do? And it's like, it's just like, I know I've already given this advice, but find yourself a Chelsea or find yourself a writing buddy so you can talk through things because a lot of us, some are visual, but a lot of us are auditory. Like we have to talk things out and that's how it
Right.
resonates with us.
And like how many times have I messaged you like, oh my God, Heather, they did it again.
Oh yeah,
They did
all
it
the
again, and
time.
I'm so mad.
Well, and things, and it's like you send me like what you're working on, and I'm like, well, this is what we want him to do. Like we want him to take control like this. Like this is not a bad thing.
Right? But I'm like,
But
I
you're just
spent
like,
so
he's
much
just
time outlining.
I
And
know,
now
I
they
know.
just like set it on fire. And they're like, no, we're gonna do it our own way. And like, yeah, I can pivot and like sort of keep to the outline a little bit, but they keep like giving me things and it just like you said with watching Fallout, when I was watching Yellowstone, Lake and I binged all like 4.5 seasons
Yeah.
that are out, like just one behind another immediately. And even though I had that regency that I had to get done by the deadline, Deceit and Desire popped into my head. And Zoe and Roman like were like given birth to as I was watching Rip and Beth on screen. and that story just consumed like every single bit of me, and I really kind of struggled with resenting having to finish something else
Yeah.
while I was so consumed with the inspiration for Deceit and Desire.
Yeah. No, and I think that like I would say that the ideal situation, if you don't have to do that, is to completely give it over to your muses and just be able to write the story without, if you didn't have any other deadlines for any other services that you're doing right now. And just because I that's like the goal, right? Is to just be able
Right.
to write what we want when we want, you know, while maintaining a business. Like who says we can't have both, you know? And
Exactly.
so yeah, so I think that that's basically like I'm gonna finish that hockey book this week, which I'm excited about.
I
But
can't wait to read it.
I'm like, I think I have to go back and edit Everly's chapter a little bit because of course, like we talked about, she did not call his dad like I thought she was going to. She just keeps asking him questions about the dad, and this like just pisses him off so much. And that's when he lashes out. And so she leaves, but it's like, I think I need to go back and make sure that she's processing it. You get like that, the emotion behind it. I need to make sure it's not just because sometimes when we get so involved in the writing, like for me at least, like I get it out, but I'm not even thinking about it. So I'm not even feeling it. I'm just like, they're telling, and I'm just writing what they're telling me. And then I need to go back and reread it and be like, okay, does this hit the right way? And so that's what I think I
Right.
need to do either
And
tonight or tomorrow. Yeah.
my first pass is almost always dialogue, like hearing their
Yeah.
voices in my head and just like getting that dialogue down. And then I'm like, okay, now what are we sensing? Like, what are we perceiving in the
Mhm.
situation? What are we feeling? And I have to like go back in and like layer these things in. But I always, always, always hear it
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
before anything else.
Yep. Yeah. So that's my goal for this week. So your goal would be to finish chapter 10, I'm assuming, or the 5 episodes, right? Your
Yeah,
five
5 episodes,
episodes.
which is going to be all of chapter 10 because that's 4 episodes, and then like the first part of chapter 11.
Okay. That sounds good. I think you could do that. Like as long as shit gets, you know, like shit doesn't hit the fan or anything.
Which it does often in my life because I am like a chaos magnet in so many ways. Like I just breed chaos
In the
everywhere I
best
go.
of way. No, just kidding, teasing you.
Right, right.
Okay.
But like, no, I had a third grade teacher, and I'm just gonna like throw this out there, like who shamed me in front of an entire class for how disorganized and messy and chaotic
Wow.
I was.
That's so
And I have
rude.
been bitter about that since third grade.
You're so petty. I love it.
I am. Like, I really, really am. Like, I have not forgotten that. But, like, she didn't take into account the fact that I was traumatized that my primary caregiver died the year before.
Yeah.
That, you know, like the person that I spent all day, every day with while both of my parents were working their asses off to give me a better life was suddenly gone.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't take any of that into account at
No.
all when
No.
she decided to like shame me in front of an entire class of other
Rude.
kids for
Yeah.
being disorganized and messy and
In
chaotic.
in
Like,
third grade. I mean,
yeah,
that's
in
third
third grade.
grade.
Like,
Um,
mm, yeah,
yeah, no, unacceptable. I want to shout out to Corey Perry right now. He is, again, this is June, guys. So please don't laugh at me if this doesn't work out the way that I want when this episode drops. But the Oilers won last night. Was it last night? I think it was. Maybe it was the day before. Anyway, they won. Corey Perry's my babe, my favorite hockey player ever. It's the only reason why I'm rooting for the Oilers. I'm not gonna lie. And so let's hope that they can win the next 3 games in a row, so Corey Perry can get another cup. But anyway, all right, Chelsea. I know, right? Is there anything else we need to discuss before we jump into this episode? Because this episode, so much, so good.
right, right.
Um.
1 stars also, like
Oh yeah.
for readers and for authors, like 1 star reviews can hit so hard. And like, I think sometimes when readers leave a 1 star review, like you're perfectly welcome to your opinions, and that's all cool. But when you leave a 1 star review because you didn't like a character in a first book in a very long series, sometimes they're forgetting that the character has to start in a place that they grow from, and like character arcs exist,
Yeah.
and characters can't be perfect like straight out of the gate. And things like that can be so frustrating sometimes and so demoralizing for authors. And like not me personally, but like someone I know was experiencing this recently. And I'm just like, first of all, like character arcs are real, they exist. Your characters can't be perfect or they will be boring. So like don't worry about it. But sometimes readers do forget that characters need to start off imperfect, and like they're still not going to be perfect at the end of their character arc, but they are going to grow.
Well, and I think that that's a really interesting point because I was talking to a client a few weeks ago about this very thing, because especially as romance authors, romance readers have a very, let's just say they have very high expectations of how things play out. And if you're a romance reader, we love you. We love how passionate you are.
Right.
However, I have noticed that the hero can be the worst and we will forgive him because he is the hero. But if you have a character like a girl and she's either super, super innocent, and so she makes decisions that she doesn't really have life experience yet, especially in college or even young adult to a degree, suddenly she's labeled as too stupid to live. If she's tough or she has a chip on her shoulder, she's a bitch. If you have X, Y, and Z, I feel like women, girls, whatever you want to, whoever they are in your story, I feel like they have such a harder time winning over potential readers than the guys do. And I totally get it. Like, but at the same time, it's like what you said. Every character arc has a character arc, or every character has an arc. And I got this a lot with my second book in this hockey series because the trope was boyfriend's older brother. And so she was with this douchebag, but if you, and I, let's just, her kind of wound or her thing was that she had been in love with her current boyfriend her entire life. And so the second they get to college, he suddenly is like, okay, do you want to go out? Now, secretly, he's only doing that because he realized his older brother was into her. And this is the one thing that he could have on his older brother. But she was forgiving a lot of the way the guy treated her. And he wasn't abusive, but he was condescending. He was belittling because she had been in love with him for so long. And some of the reviews I got were, I didn't like her. She just let him walk all over her. She did X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, first of all, they were only together for a couple of months. She thinks she loves him her entire life, but she needed this treatment to understand why it's important for her that, oh yeah, she should be with the older brother. um and some of the readers actually were like, I didn't like her at the beginning, but I loved watching her grow. And I think that that's like a huge compliment. But it's like you said, like you also have to understand that your character has to start somewhere, and if she doesn't grow, then she's not interesting. One of the reasons Fallout was such a joy, not just with people like us, but across the spectrum, across politics, across all of these things, was because you had Lucy, who was very naive, but she was competent. Like, she wasn't an idiot, she was naive, and she wasn't like this badass who was throwing Monty around or who was throwing all, like, she had to learn slowly. And we're going to talk about this when we talk about her with Snip Snip and the Super Duper Mart. But this, a lot of criticism that is happening in mainstream media, and whether you agree with it or not, and I don't mean you, Chelsea, I just mean like our listeners or watchers, whatever, is sometimes
Right.
the heroine starts out as like this Mary Sue, is what we would call it in the fan fiction world, where it's like, you're perfect, you're a badass, like you can do anything. And when, back in my day, when you were reading fanfic, when you were like 10, 15, 20, like Mary Sue's were completely like, you did not want to be right a Mary Sue. You wanted that imperfection. And
Right.
nowadays it's like, you have it almost everywhere. Like, if your character isn't perfect, if she's not this badass or this definition of what strong independent woman means, then you're going to get this pushback with things like, let's just say, Captain Marvel. Whether you agree with it or not, she got a lot of pushback, especially in that second movie. And I just want to see, I love Lucy because she is imperfect and she's not this badass and she's learning. And I think that second season of Fallout with Cooper is going to teach her so much because she's already learning. And again, in this episode, we'll talk about it. She's learning so much. And so we see her grow. And that is such an important part of your character, your character's journey. Like if they stay flat the whole time, unless you're writing this episodic fiction, like cozies or whatever, you want your character to grow. And so they have to start somewhere for them to end up somewhere else. And so you just kind of have to be patient and sort of trust the author,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like I feel like a lot of people forget that and it irritates me. And like, characters have to have a place to grow from. They can't be perfect. Like
Right. No. And
can think
they
they're
shouldn't be.
perfect, but
They
like
should, yeah. Well, and I think that that's like it's just super important, and Lucy is not perfect. We already know Max isn't perfect. We know Cooper's not perfect, but Lucy isn't either. And I think that we need to be okay with Lucy not being perfect. We need to be okay with all of our female characters not being perfect. And we need to understand they're going to make dumb decisions, but that is the only way they are going to learn and grow. So they don't make these decisions. Like even an anime from like our childhood, like Sailor Moon, like she's this whiny crybaby who's scared of everything. And we see her grow into who Sailor Moon is, but we wouldn't be able to appreciate that growth and development if we didn't see her start out as this like really annoying kind of brat who didn't like school, who loved food, and who just, was kind of selfish, And if we don't see that, we only see her as this badass Sailor Moon. It's like, well, okay, like I'm not a badass. Like, how is that inspiring to me? I want to see the messy bits and I want to see the
right.
failures. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And like I think a lot of that, like expecting perfection, goes back to the way people present themselves on social media nowadays,
Mhm.
because so much is sanitized
Yeah.
and so much is like, I'm not going to show the messy parts, the ugly bits, the struggle, like none of that. You're just going to get to see the bright, shiny parts. And that's I don't want to see that,
Yeah.
Like, yes, good for you. I do want to see your achievements and I want to celebrate them with you. But I also want to see the struggle. If there's no struggle in it for me, then there's no sense of satisfaction when I
Yeah.
see the
And I think that's why you and I, especially, we gravitate towards enemies to lovers because we see them in different places and we watch as they grow together. And like Beauty and the Beast, Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf, like we see that sort of um, relationship. And when they start, they're two very different people, but then being around that person changes them. And that's, I think, my favorite trope is like the enemies to lovers paired with that forced proximity. And I mean, we're just going to get it in season 2. So I'm just looking forward to it.
I'm very much looking forward to season 2. And I saw today on Twitter that they're gonna start filming in September. And
That's
like
fast.
I cannot wait to start seeing like stills from the set and things like that. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
so ready and so prepared. So are we ready to get into episode 4 of Fallout?
Let's do it. I want to say really quick, this is episode 4. So this would be, if you're writing a book, the midpoint. And usually you'll have sort of like a midpoint reversal or a very important lesson that's learned that kind of shifts perception of your hero or your heroine. So just keep that in mind when we discuss it. And I would like to mention too, what was very interesting about this particular episode is that we don't see Max at all. It is just Lucy and the Ghoul and the Valties, and they go back and forth. And I thought that that was very, very interesting because this story and every single part of this story was important. Like, was important, and that is, I'm not trying to, make a diss out on Max, but I felt like that was very, very interesting. So Chelsea, why don't you
Right.
jump in? Let's set the scene.
I feel like it plays into my Maximus as a villain theory. I love it. Also, I saw that Wired interview with the three of them the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see when they asked Aaron the question about is the Brotherhood of Steel evil? Then the
No, I
way he
didn't see.
answered it.
No, wait, I watched that one a while ago, and I might not have been paying as much attention as I should have on that. Anyway, but tell me, no, how did he respond?
So I love the way he grinned and he just kind of like did these little shifty eyes and he was like, I think that they think what they are doing is right. And
That's
that's
a
how he
really good
answered it.
answer. That's a
It
good
is an
answer.
excellent answer. And I'm just sitting here like beating my little Max gonna be a villain drum.
You should send me that link and I will post it in the show notes. So in case people want to check out that interview, we can get it to them. Because I love when actors talk about stuff like that because it's very insightful on who they think their character is too, you know?
Right.
And I just,
adore that.
yeah, I love
I think
that.
it's fantastic. I'm so excited.
And
also,
and
I have like a rabbit side note here for a
yes,
second
go for it.
because we've talked about Raylo so many times. Like, I just want to be clear that we are not shitting on the Raylo ship and you are allowed to ship whatever the
Yeah,
fuck you
no
want.
judgment,
Like,
no
we are here
judgment.
for that, no judgment. What we are saying is that the writers should have served it to you better in a way that the story makes sense.
Well, you
And that's
deserved
all we're
better.
saying.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
you
no.
deserve
Oh
better from
yeah,
the
for
writers.
sure. And that's the only issue I think so many people had with it is that it wasn't set up for like if you know the backstory of the movies, it was who's the guy that everyone but who did the first one? I forget. James can't no. Oh my gosh.
My brain
I
is blanking right now
okay,
because I'm so consumed
it's
with
JJ
Fallout.
Abrams. It's JJ Abrams, right? JJ
Right. I
Abrams
think
and
so.
then it was Ryan something. He's the guy who does the Daniel Craig movies that I'm also blanking on. The
The James Bond
mysteries.
films
No,
or
the
not?
mysteries.
The
And then
mysteries.
it went back to, yeah,
The Knives Out ones or
Knives Out,
the other
yes. And then it went back, I think, to JJ Abrams. And so they had such different takes on this story, and you can completely tell how mishmashed it was. And so JJ Abrams had set up so many things in the first movie. Ryan Ryan Johnson kind of did like he was like, that's cute, but I'm gonna do it this way because this is what I want from this. And then JJ Abrams had to kind of retcon things or try to smooth it all out. And so when you're writing, you know, this is why it's really important. You don't necessarily have to plot every single book, but I always like to know where are my characters starting and where are they ending to kind of have a good idea of a character arc. And they were only doing a trilogy. It shouldn't have been that, you know, jilted, but I highly doubt JJ Abrams was setting up Rey and Kylo Ren to be together canonically. And I think that they put it in the story as a way to give fan service versus serving the actual story, because if they wanted to do that better, he knows what he's doing in terms of that. And so anyway,
right.
I just think that
It could have been done so much better for
yeah,
the fans and the story at the same time. Like it could have served both the fans and the
yeah,
story.
which was what we're hoping Fallout is going to do. And we see that, I mean, I rarely ship canon ships, but I saw that really well with like I said, Frank Castle and Karen Page in The Punisher. And I'm watching Justified right now. So I'm like halfway through with like I'm in season 3 and I love Boyd and Ava and they're really serving that really well. Like I loved watching that again, character growth. So it's going to be really interesting to watch how Fallout progresses. But in terms of Raylo, yeah, like even though I wasn't shipping it, the reason I'm not shipping it is because I couldn't see it happen because I love Daisy Ridley, I love Adam Driver, and I do think that they had the chemistry. It was more of just I did not like Kylo Ren as a character because of who the writers made him and what they had him do in that first movie. And because of that, I couldn't see myself shipping him with Daisy Rey. And the way that it happened across the rest of the movies, it just felt so forced versus, oh, this is so natural and all of this stuff. So that's just my take. But I want everyone to know, like, we are ship and let ship. Like, we have no
Yeah.
judgment here. You do whatever you want. Our only thing is like, you don't shit on our ships. We're not gonna shit on yours. We're just gonna love shipping, you know? So
Right,
that's
like,
our
we love
rule.
shipping, and, like, I have been kind of stunned by some of the hate I've seen thrown around at people who are shipping Ghouls like we do. Like, I have seen some death threats mentioned and some kill yourself
Wow.
suggestions made for shipping Ghouls, and, like, that's not who we are, that's not what we're about. Like, we just wanna have our ships and love our ships, and we wanna let you guys do the same thing. Like, we are never shitting on anybody else's ships.
No. Or
We are
characters.
just pointing out
Like,
why things didn't work for us as writers
right. Yeah.
in certain ships or way things were presented in certain shows or pieces of media or even like books we read if we discuss books in the future.
Well, and I think that it's important too, because our thing is, for the most part, we are crack shippers. And so a lot of the time we aren't going to get that canon ship. And one of the jobs that I think me and Chelsea thought were really important is talking about, okay, why did they turn this? Why did we gravitate towards this relationship versus this relationship? And how did they play it out and how didn't they play out? And so I know, for example, like when True Blood was on, I was a big Suki and Eric thing, like shipper, and we kind of got a little bit in season 4, and then it all went to crap. Like, I didn't like how they got together in season 4. I
Mhm.
wanted her to love Eric. I mean, we should probably do an episode on True Blood just all together, but
We really
like,
should, and I feel like we should invite one of my follower like one of our followers on Twitter, Manda, because she replied to one of my tweets asking about like what's your OG ship, and she mentioned Sookie and Eric,
yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah, we
I hit
should.
you up, Manda.
Yeah, no, because I'm only bringing this up to be like, seasons 1 through 3, I was all about Sookie and Eric. Then I got Sookie and Eric, but not in the way that I wanted to get Sookie and Eric. And then it all went to shit. I think they had 7 seasons, like, so 5, 6, and 7. I'm here hoping that they're gonna fix the shit, because seasons 1 through 3 were so good, and and so like it's sort of like, we do tend to crack shit because things are getting shoved down our throats about who should be together, and oh, well, we're going to just cause some drama in this awesome ship. And and so that's why we want to talk about all of these things. And because Fallout had come out a few months ago, and me and Chelsea were just thirsting for Ghoul C and the Ghoul, we were just like, let's just sit down and talk about it while it's still fresh in our heads. But just expect, like, we might not do like episode by episode breakdowns, but we will touch on a lot of these ships from, like, the past, and talk about, like, why do we like them so much, and what the writers got right, what the writers got wrong, and why, and break down why we ship who we ship, because I think that that's really important as writers to understand. When you're writing your book, like, how can you make sure that your readers are rooting for this guy versus that guy?
Right. And that's
So
especially important when you're writing love triangles,
yeah,
which like I tend to avoid like the plague because I
yeah,
don't write them well.
yeah.
But when you do write love triangles, that is super duper important.
Hmm. So anyway, let's get back to Fallout. So
Yes.
we open with Lucy and Cooper. Where are they going?
Um, they are going into a medical center to look for Kim's since she accidentally broke all of his Kims in the
And
last
I
episode.
want to jump in here because I didn't realize this the first time I'm watching. His first instinct is not to sell her. I just want to put that out right there. He was looking for chems somewhere else. And obviously we'll go through it, but I'm just pointing it out that once he realizes he's not going to get his chems from his usual sources, that is when he decides, well, I can't go feral. I have to get these chems. So now I am taking her to this place. But it was not his first place to take her.
Right. Yeah, like that
Yeah,
wasn't his first play. It wasn't his first option. And
right.
like, yes, he is deeply pissed off and irritated with her because she broke his Kims. And he is trying to teach her things. Even in the opening scenes of this episode with them in the medical center and them running into Roger.
Yeah.
And I like this episode is just so big for me and like me and my Ghouls goggles that are never coming off no matter
Never,
what anybody says.
never. Well, and I think that it's really important with the scene from with Roger is we see humanity in Cooper, like just in the way that
Right.
he talks. Like, oh, hey, Raj, he's not calling him Valti, he's not calling him anything. He's actually giving the guy his name. Um,
Right. And
and
he's
I love,
addressing him in a friendly, familiar
yes,
kind of way. And like I love this scene and I really wanted to talk about this scene because Lucy is so horrified by what Cooper does, but to me, like I see it in a very different light than what I think Lucy is viewing this as.
yes, yeah,
Because Cooper can see that Roger is going feral. There
yes,
are no Kims here. There are no options. And I think that Cooper doesn't want to see that, like, this guy may not necessarily be his friend, but he doesn't want to see this acquaintance of his go feral. He doesn't want Roger to have to suffer through that. So when he distracts him and talks about, you remember what food was like,
yeah.
and then kills him, that's a mercy killing.
That is a mercy killing. And I think that it's important to note Cooper probably doesn't like a lot of people. He's not going to go out of his way to talk to people. So the fact that he knew who Roger was, and on top of that, was willing to talk to him this way, it showed me that this guy is important to Cooper in some way, or at least there's a mutual respect between the two. And so for him to put down someone that he cares about as much as Cooper can care about anyone, that was really significant. And it's
Yeah.
obviously it's funny because again, it's in that placement of that midpoint. And so we are going to circle back to this in episode 8 when we'll just say that Lucy is put in a similar position. And I just want to touch on a couple of things. So I loved how Roger saw like to Coop, like you have a smoothie of your own. And so again, you have that possession. And later on, he calls him, oh, your smoothie friend. And neither time do Cooper and Lucy correct him at all. Like
Right? Like
they just
neither
go
one of
with
them
it.
corrects
No.
him. Exactly.
Yeah. And so and I think that this is really important too, because this is where Lucy realizes why Cooper was so mad at her. Like she understands that like, oh, he needs this or he's going to turn into that. And I think that visually seeing that, it kind of hit home for her. Like, even if maybe she didn't necessarily agree with his outburst or his reaction or how he's treating her, she could at least understand like, oh, this is what he's going to turn into if he doesn't get that. And so there is that
Right.
kind of understanding there.
And like it's just a dawning of understanding though, because Roger's not feral yet, and she hasn't really gotten a taste of what a feral ghoul is like
Right.
until we get to the super duper mart. And like so it's a slow dawning of understanding across this episode with that. And like I think one of the reasons that like he's so irritated with her when they get to the super duper mart is that she gets that sort of high and mighty tone with him
Yeah.
about killing Roger. She doesn't recognize at all that it was a mercy killing.
Right.
She doesn't give him any kind of credit for that. And like I think that's part of why he had his, panties in a bunch with her, so to speak, when they got to the super duper mart and why he, felt even more justified in doing this to get his Kims because she completely missed the point
Well,
of
and
ending Roger's life right there.
oh yeah, but to be fair, I think that Lucy doesn't know what a mercy killing is because she's never had to experience that. And I think that plays into her ignorance. And this is where a lot of readers, if this were a book, might call Lucy stupid or unfeeling or whatever. And it's like, this is really important because this is a growing moment for her.
Right,
And
and
we
a
do
learning
see that.
moment.
Yeah. And so just in terms of like world building, we find out that Roger is one of the older ghouls, but he's only been a ghoul for like 28 years.
Right,
Whereas when Roger's like, oh, but not you, Coop, how, or he doesn't say Coop, but he's like, but not you, like, how long have you been around? And again, we don't know. All Cooper says is a long time. And that he's just been and Roger's like, oh, well, that's a lot of chem. And he's like, well, I've always been good at making money. And so we see
right.
just in that little bit of dialogue, okay, Cooper is like in terms of character revealing, we know he has a skill set. He's been around as a ghoul a lot longer. And since we already know he's Cooper the movie star, we know he's been around for 200 years. So he's skilled, he knows how to track. We see all of this in just a couple of lines of dialogue. And again, this is where you brought up like, oh, we talk about food and how good it used to taste. And so when Cooper does make that killing blow, Roger's thinking about something he loved. He's not thinking
Right.
about, oh, I'm so scared about turning feral, or I regret, how I did this, or I wish I could have done that. Cooper is purposefully getting him into the mindset of the last thing I'm going to ever remember is something that I enjoyed. And that was, again, a very small taste of that humanity that Cooper has. And I think that that is so significant for who he is as a character, especially right there, because Lucy's been around him a little bit, but not to change, like, she hasn't changed him. If anything, she's pissed him off the whole time. And so the fact that he
Right.
still has that retention of who he used to be, I think is really important.
I think it
So,
is too. And then
yeah.
I love as the journey goes further that we get that Hades and Persephone moment with her drinking the irradiated water in this episode,
Oh
finally.
yeah. Oh yeah. No, and I think that's perfect. Wait, we will go into that, but I think that this is okay. So obviously Cooper kills Roger, but he doesn't know her name until right then because she's kind of lecturing him as he's like, getting the ass jerky from Roger, grabbing the teeth that he can sell. And he says, "What did you say your name was?" And then Lucy's like, "Lucy McLean." And bam, we realize that Cooper knows her dad because he makes this smartass comment about the dad. And Lucy's all like, my dad never did anything like this. Back, in the plague of 77, so many people died. And even my mom got really, really sick. And my dad dropped to like 127 pounds and he still didn't do something like that. And Cooper's all like, well, what your dad says and what your dad does is two different things, or something along those lines. And then Lucy asks, why do you keep going? Like, how do you live like this? And that it almost like it wakes him up, like, and he's like, you know what the question is? Why the fuck am I doing all the work? And that's when he makes her get her hands dirty. Like like you said, this prissy little girl is giving him this full-on lecture about X, Y, and Z and how better her dad is than Cooper Howard. And
Right.
and it's like he just realized, excuse me, like now you're gonna go get some ass jerky for me. And like again, it's like that. Well, she's disgusted by it, but she, and again, this goes back to our discussion of pick your battles. She goes and she does it. And I think that,
Right. I love that she like grits her teeth and sucks it up and does it. Like that's a part of her personality.
yeah,
And I don't know. I just love them together. I love the chemistry and like I love that moment. And it's a teaching moment and that
yeah,
he is not coming out and telling her the full lesson
mm-mm.
as of yet, but it is in fact a teaching moment with him making her do the work there.
Well, and also too, he could have said everything about her father. Like he could have been like, actually, your father did X, Y, and Z. But I think Cooper's smart enough to know that if he did do that, she wouldn't believe him. She would just think
Right.
he's an idiot. So he's biding his time. And this brings me back to my original question. Like, why is he keeping her alive at this point? They've already lost the head. And he could just take her pit boy, which he would know because he knows what pit boys are, because Barb had a pit boy. Like he
Right.
could have just taken it to track it, and or he might not even realize that it can be tracked at this point, So it's like, why is he keeping her alive when even after they leave, the medical center, if he was going to sell her for parts, he can kill her. It's probably going to be a little bit easier for him. I mean, maybe he wants her to walk all the way and then he does it, but it's like there is no reason at this point to keep her alive. Unless, like, I mean, I guess you could argue, well, once he found out who she was, maybe that's why, but then okay, he's going to sell her for parts anyway. So
Right.
especially if
I
you
think
once
it may have more to do with when we are selling organs, it's better if you bring the victim in alive.
okay.
And
That makes
Uh,
sense. I wasn't sure. I've never sold anyone for parts, so I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know the
Like when
protocol.
we're harvesting organs from a body, it's better to take them from a live body.
Oh, I didn't
Generally.
know that. Okay. Um, okay. And so anyway, so okay, so then it jumps over to Valti and we see Betty bringing Norm the pie. You can go into this, Chelsea. Go ahead.
I loved this conversation so much. I loved everything about this conversation. I love how pragmatic Norm is.
I love
I
Norm.
just like I just adore Norm. Like everything about him, he deserves the best in the world. Like I hope so many good things for his
He's our
character.
cinnamon roll. Like, let's be honest, he's our cinnamon roll of the show, I think.
He's such a pragmatic, sarcastic asshole on the surface, and I think that's what attracts me to him because that smart ass mouth is like a thing for
Yeah.
me. But I just love how he doesn't back down ever. Like
Mm-mm.
he never backs down, and I think he and Lucy have that in common.
But
But he doesn't back down from a challenge.
he does it in not an aggressive way, in
No,
like a
he's a very cerebral
calculated,
character.
yes. And I think that that's why I like him so much. And that's why I love seeing him paired with Chet, who's very emotional. And he is, and Norm is much more like reserved. And so it's like when he and Betty are having this back and forth, he picks his words so carefully because it's like you said, he's
Right.
not backing down. And she knows he's not backing down because of what he says, but he doesn't need to get in her face. He doesn't need to yell. He doesn't need to do any of those things. But we know Norm isn't backing down. And I think that
Norm is
that's very good.
playing chess.
Yeah.
Chet, bless his soul, is like on the sidelines watching the game. We love him. He's sweet. He's a good cheerleader. He's cute. But Chet is not necessarily even in the game.
Should we talk about the birth scene really quick?
Yes. God bless him.
So Steph comes over with a box of her husband's things. And this is actually really interesting because my question is, okay. And let me ask you, Chelsea, like writer to writer, do we believe that Steph actually loved her husband? Because she comes to Chet, and I have this quoted, those monsters took away my husband. And then, she's like, here, I thought you could have some of, these are his last things ever. And so, like, for me, if I loved my husband, I ain't giving him to I'm keeping that shit. But then you
Right.
see her initiate sex essentially. And so I'm like,
Yeah,
is
like
this
she
all
dresses him up like Bert
right?
with the sweater and the scarf and then starts calling him by Bert's name. And I'm like, I'm a little bit torn on this.
Or is she manipulating him in order to, because she does want revenge, because we kind of saw it in her conversation with Norm in the last episode where it's like your dad would these monsters took my husband, your dad would do the right thing. And so
Right.
my thing is, it's like it was obvious like from episode 1 that, and even with how they talk about Bert, like he loved his shoes so much that when he started talking about him he wouldn't stop until the last person left or something, just like indicating no one wanted to hear about his stupid shoes. And it's like,
Right.
did she love him, or is this kind of like a manipulation to sort of, I don't know, like, I
Right.
honestly don't know. Like,
I honestly love that I can't tell
yeah,
with
right?
Steph.
Yeah.
Like, I love that I can't tell if she genuinely loved some part of Bert
And this is like her
or,
mourning, like her going crazy because her husband was killed in front of her,
right.
or is it more like, I'm gonna get this guy in my back pocket kind of thing, you know?
So if I decide I'm going to rise up against Betty in the future,
Mhm.
I've got Chet on my side.
I mean,
God bless
why
Chet,
we want Chet?
sweet
Well,
baby.
to be fair, she did go for Norm first, not sexually, but just to be like, hey, just so you
Just
know,
like
you're
aligning
right. Yeah,
interests. Yep.
yeah. And I thought that that was interesting. Okay, so but Betty and Norm, it was very interesting because they're talking about pie and they're talking about Betty specifically says something about, oh, Norm, like she says something like about Norm, I wish you were like other boys because when other boys get angry, they just go pee
They'll
on
pee on the
things.
wall.
Yeah, they go pee on the wall. But I think what did she say? Like quiet boys are different.
Clever. She
Clever
said
boys are
clever. When
different.
clever boys like you get angry.
Yeah, and he says something like, "Well, what do we do or what do they do?" And she's like, "What did she say? I can't remember."
Trying to remember. I can't remember the exact line.
It was something like you don't even want to see what they're capable of or something. And I'm
Right.
curious if she was hinting at Cooper. Like
I really hope she was. I
because
sincerely hope she was.
because I feel like a lot of people when Cooper was Cooper the actor before everything, they didn't take him seriously. I think Barb
Right.
was
Like they
very
just kind of played
condescending.
him off as
Like,
like a
oh, he's an
little
actor, he's an
fluffy
idiot,
pretty
like
boy.
he's just gonna go do whatever we tell him to do. It's gonna go over his head. And so I don't think anyone was expecting when Cooper, went to Moldaver's meeting. And then on top of that, and again, in this entire first season, we don't know what Cooper did. We just know that when the show starts, he and Barbara divorced, the bombs are dropped, and clearly Vault-Tec, has implemented what they planned to implement. So I'm curious about like what did Cooper do? Because I wouldn't be surprised if Betty is talking about Cooper because at this point, who else could she be talking about? In
Right.
terms of clever boys, and this is what happens when they're angry. And so I honestly think that that is a little bit, and granted, if you're going into this blind, you have no idea what she's talking about, but then you do your watch through and you realize, okay, these are all of the players that she's
Mm-hmm.
insinuating this. And I love this foreshadowing because it's so good. Okay. So, okay, we're going to get back to they leave the medical center. Then we get the Hades and Persephone scene. I know Chelsea wants to jump in, but I'm going to make her wait just a little bit. How sexual is the everything about their interactions? Like fucking BDSM, like the fucking noose, even just the water dripping down his chin and the way he's looking at her. And like, I'm just like, okay, Nelly, where are
It
you?
was
I need to take my clothes off here. Like
it
I
was
don't,
so sexually charged.
it was
Like the
all,
lassoing is like, first of all, that is a hot skill. That is why cowboys are sexy. Like,
oh my
you
gosh.
put that to use,
I'm
sir.
getting flushed just thinking about it, but like just the fucking looks that they give each other. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that I'm not sexualizing Walton Goggins. I mean, he already does that himself. I'm not trying to be that person, but I'm just like, how can I watch this and not see this sexualization of it? She has one shoe on. Like
Right.
and it's interesting because he walks behind her and obviously it shows that he doesn't trust her yet because he needs her in front of him, but that will change at the end of episode 8, which we will get into. But it's
Yep.
just like that whole thing. And even when she literally he's right here, she drops to her knees and starts shoveling water in her mouth and he just watches her and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yes,
oh my
and
god,
like the looks
yes,
he is
yes.
serving, and it is so like Hades and Persephone
Mhm.
coded. Like,
It's that controlling, I'm in charge. I think you showed me the meme for Father's Day yesterday. He's like the daddiest of daddies. And it's like,
right? Like, your daughter calls me daddy too. He is the
yeah,
king of that now. Yeah.
yes. And then he looks at her and he's like smirking and he's like, what about your golden rule now? And it's almost like, who's your daddy? Like I just the whole
It
scene and
has the same tone.
it's like it's literally that whole scene was silent. Nothing needed to be said, but I just was like, I was I was like, whoa, like,
Right. And I love the her being like, what are you?
oh
And
my
the,
gosh, I
oh,
loved that.
I'm you, sweetie. Just give it a little time. Like,
Oh yeah, like, and he gets in her face when he says it, like,
I
not in an
know.
aggressive way, but more like, I'm, I'm like, I'm like,
Like on your level, and
oh
like
my gosh.
the simmer between them in that. Like,
But the best part is he starts coughing. So technically speaking, Lucy kind of won that stare down. And I think that that pisses him off and it reminds him, oh shit, I have to get Kem. I can't be bantering and flirting with this girl.
right.
I have to be smart about it. And it's like to go back to that callback to Barb, of just like the more Cooper spends time with her, the more he is going to be amused by her. Like he'll be condescending, he'll be a dick, but he's poking her to get a reaction. And to me, that's like almost like love at first sight for him. Like for a lot of these guys where it starts off as enemies to lovers, because if you genuinely hated someone, you wouldn't want to even interact with them at all. And we see
Right,
that
like
a
you
lot.
wouldn't engage.
No, you wouldn't engage. Exactly. And he is doing it now to needle her. And maybe this is like his way to get back at her, not only for the chems, but for the shot about her dad and like just to kind of be a dick. I think he's being a dick to be a dick. But it's like then he starts coughing and he's like, okay, I can't. I need to
Right.
get,
Well, and I love that she takes that opportunity,
oh yeah.
like the little Miss
Yeah.
bad bitch that she is. Like she's
She's
not
so
a
cute.
queen bad bitch
Yeah.
yet, but like she takes that opportunity and she runs from him. And that hood slide, can we just talk about the hood slide
Oh,
across the
she
front
was a
for
badass.
a
Are you
second?
kidding
Like
me?
that was fucking awesome. I
I
loved
loved
every
that.
bit of that. But then he lassos her ass and is like,
I was like,
I
oh,
think
back to the
not.
sex. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I was like, sir, can we just contain it for one scene? I need to get my bearings. I'm watching this with my husband and I can't go feral myself while watching the scene. Please, sir. Like, huh.
Right?
Oh
Like
my God.
I am overwhelmed by your raw
Yes.
sexuality in every fucking scene of this show, first of all.
I am
And like
34 years old. I thought I knew myself, but now I'm like, what is going on here?
right. Right. And
No,
like
but this whole
35,
thing.
but I feel you
Oh
so
my
hard. But
gosh.
like the way Walton plays the ghoul, like that is very on brand for me and my type.
Yeah.
Like, I have a type, and like Rip and the Ghoul fall very neatly into
Oh
that type.
yeah. But I also love like what you said, like when she takes the opportunity to leave, she doesn't do it right away though. There's that little bit of hesitation, like, should I
Right.
help him? And then she's like, no, fuck that. I'm gonna ditch. Why don't you go into the moment now of like she drinks the water and you say it's Hades and Persephone coded. Like, let's hear your thoughts.
Right. Well, like it's very, because I've been talking about this for 4 episodes now, like the Wasteland is the underworld.
Mhm.
He is the Radiation King. She's the Atomic Queen.
Right.
Like
And
we
we see that
have
a
these
little bit at the end
three
of this episode.
setups.
Yeah.
And when she drinks the water, to me, that screams of the moment when Persephone's in the underworld and she's consuming the pomegranate. And like, you can't, like, that is, you are a part of the underworld now,
You
and you
can't just
cannot
leave.
leave
Yeah. Well,
once you have done that. There's
and
no going back from that point. And to me, that's very Hades and Persephone coded.
oh no, that when you told me that, I think you told me this like what 3 weeks ago or something.
Yeah.
It was just like mind blown because that is the truth. And depending on the where you're reading this myth, it's like either she's ignorant and she eats the seeds because she doesn't know any better, but you also have the other ones where she does know better and she's either tricked into eating them or she is forced into eating them because she isn't eating anything else. And so she has to eat them. And
Right.
Lucy is at the place where like she has to drink this water. Like she is at that point, and that is part of Cooper's lesson for her is like, and even it's that callback to I think it's Welsick, is that his name?
Wilzig.
Well,
Yeah.
Wilsick, yeah. And it's like, what are you gonna want when you're a completely different animal altogether? And we already see her changing because beforehand she would never touch radiated water because she doesn't know how it's going to affect her, or obviously it's not good for her. But at this
Right.
point, being with Cooper for I mean, I don't know how long they've been together, like maybe a few days, but it's like, no, she's like she needs that water to survive, just like Cooper needs that chem to survive because they're both trying to get their family back and they will
Right.
do whatever it takes to do that. And so, yeah,
Well,
I
and
thought
I
that was a
think
point.
him forcing her to drink that irradiated water basically was him making the point of like, this is the position you've put me in when you destroyed my chems. How
Yeah.
does it feel?
Well, and to go to that, he doesn't actually force her. She makes the choice. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Like, yeah,
he's
he
fine.
presents her with the choice, but she's so
Exactly.
dehydrated that she's not gonna make any other choice.
So I have to tell you, I read this fanfic and it was so genius. It was like he would put water in his mouth and he'd be like, you can only have what comes out of my mouth. And so like she would have to like I'll
And you
find
haven't sent me the link yet.
I
What is
have to
wrong with you?
I was like, damn girl, that's good. I'll get the title and the link and I'll put it in the show notes too. But I was just like that because that's exactly something Cooper would do. Like, let's be
Right.
honest. Um, so anyway, okay, so the lasso, Cooper. And we see it's such a callback to again that first episode where we see him on his horse doing the fucking lasso. So we know he already knows how to do this. And
Right.
let's get into the next part, Chelsea. What happens when he lassos her?
I love when he lassos her and like they're kind of going back and forth with each other and they start tussling and then she bites his finger off. And the his line
Mm.
is
This is
so
my
well
favorite line in the whole
delivered.
show. Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
it is my favorite line in the whole show too. And just like shout out to Walton Goggins. This was fucking incredible the way you played this, sir. Like, my God. But also so sexually loaded. Like, just you first of all, it is like illegal to have everything be that sexually charged. But when she bites his finger off and like the look he gives her and the way he delivered the there you are, you little killer, like whoop,
Mhm.
sir.
He loved it. Are you kidding?
He was
He
so
was
proud of her.
fucking hard. Are you kidding me? He was hard when he bit her or when she bit his finger. He
Oh
like
yeah, when she bit his finger off,
yeah,
A, he got hard, and B, he was like a proud daddy. He was
yeah.
so fucking proud of her
Mm-hmm.
for that coming out of her. Like he was absolutely proud
Oh
in
yeah.
that moment.
And then
And
he just
uh,
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I love later in the next episode the thing with the thread when he's sewing her
No, you have
finger
to
on his
tell her.
body.
You have to tell them what does he do back. He grabs her up, and what does he do with
He grabs
hers?
her up and he cuts her finger off, like but like staring her in her eyes, like
Yeah.
very power dynamic-y stare there as he's cutting her finger off. And I love what he says after he cuts her finger off. It
Mm-hmm.
says that's as close as we've come to an honest exchange so far. Like,
And again, you have to wonder,
mm,
like, why does he even care about getting an honest exchange? Like, what was the point of that line specifically? And I know it is to show Lucy, like, you're kind of an idiot. You're very privileged to have come where you come, and now you're basically in my world. You're in the underworld now. But the fact that he even cares to teach her these lessons in the first place, and again, we're dark romance girlies. He's trying to get revenge on dear old daddy. Like, I get that,
mhm,
but at the same time, he is now going to take a vested interest in Lucy. And we will see that in the next episode when the ramifications of the super duper mart start hitting the wrong sort of people. But I just thought that it was just a lot of the stuff, like doing the second walkthrough, I'm like, he doesn't have to do a lot of the stuff that he does in
right,
terms of keeping her alive. Maybe like, okay, when he decides he's going to sell her, yeah, keeping her alive, but he didn't know he was going to do that before. When he takes her to the medical center, he doesn't know he's going to sell her at that point. He thinks he's just going to get some chem from Raj and go from there.
right. Well, and like
Yeah,
even as far back as the like, episode 2 in Philly, like right when they first meet, that man had a whole ass opportunity to just shoot the fuck out of her when he was letting her
exactly.
make her little speech, and he
Yeah.
didn't. And
No, and
like,
he didn't.
why?
Even after the fact, he didn't do it, And so that's to me, that's poignant. Um, so anyway, so then the next scene is the whole like fucking shit. Steph is finally giving him some. It's the first time Shep probably is having sex with who is not his cousin. Okay.
Right,
And what does he say? He said, "Now that's a wet woman or something."
right. Yeah, that's a wet lady, and
Okay, that's not how you
because
dirty
her
talk,
water is
Shep.
broken, and
Yes.
I laughed so hard I cried because like I just remember that feeling from when my water broke when I had River. Like, we had gone to get my membrane stripped, and then we waited down by the hospital, which is like 45 minutes away, for like an hour
Yeah.
before we were like, fuck it, nothing's gonna happen. Let's go home. And like, as we're driving home in the car, my water breaks
Yeah.
when we're almost home, and we had to turn around and go back to the hospital.
I'm like, oh, Chet. Oh, Chet. And this is why it's going to be so important when Lucy and the ghoul do have sex, because he can show her what good dirty talk really is about. Anyway,
Right?
so
Exactly.
she's giving birth, and you have Chet just still sitting in Bert's clothes, Like, so uncomfortable. So when Norm drops by and he's like, "You want to get out of the house for a little bit?" Chet's like, "Yes, I do."
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, let's go.
So, anyway, so
And I
yeah, I
love everything they did with Vault 32
oh
in
yeah.
this episode, and Chet and Norm going through Vault 32 and seeing that the last biosignal on these people was from 2 years ago. The
Okay,
thing
I
with the
had
TV and the
yes.
mice,
Oh my yeah, okay.
that was so
I have notes on
genius.
all of these things. Okay, so before we jump over to that, it's like Norm has been given another job and it's to deliver food to the, people, to the raiders who are imprisoned. He
Mhm.
gives the cake to the girl. I don't even think we might have gotten a name. I can't remember. I don't
I
remember
can't
her name.
remember either.
Um, but what's interesting is Norm is handing the food to one of the raiders. And um Norm and the Raider have a back and forth, and he says something about Vault 32, and then the Raider comes back with, "I don't know what they were up to in Vault 32, but it was anything but innocent." And it's interesting because Norm decides to believe the guy rather than kind of write it off like crazy Raider talk. And so
Mhm.
he starts looking into it. And so based on what we do know right now, that the Raiders came in through Vault 32, and they must have seen all of the shit that we're about to talk about. So Norm goes to get Chet. And so together they decide to, well, Chet doesn't decide anything, but Norm takes him to Vault 32. And we see, like you said, we see all of these bodies. We see even Chet's remarks like, um, let's see, like they killed each other with their own hands, like they strangled each other. And we see the
Right.
guy having the fork in the toaster. And based on the decay of the bodies, it didn't just happen. Like the Raiders did not kill these people. Like
No.
they have been dead for a long time. We see the wall, it says, "We know the truth."
Yep.
And even the
And then Norm
overseer.
checks the Pip
Yep.
Boy, and it says the last biosignal was 2 years ago. So these people have been dead for a whole 2 years.
And so again, so this raises questions because now I'm like, okay, did Hank, did Betty, did these people know about this? Because if they did, why did they let Lucy have a marriage exchange with Vault 32? And
Right.
so and so like because Hank, we've already discussed his one redeeming quality is his love for his children, his love for Lucy especially. And so I don't know if Hank knew what happened in Vault 32. And so my thing then is like, okay, well, if they're supposed to be interconnected, how do they not know what happened to
No.
Vault 32?
Right.
And so this is where I'm kind of confused. Even now, like we don't get a lot of these answers by episode 8, but it does raise the question. So, and what you said was really good, like the mice, because I made sure to quote that, is that the mice say they eat each other in their desperation to survive. And so it
Right.
almost seemed like that played out where either they found out the truth of Vault 31.
They did.
Yeah,
They
go
did.
ahead.
Because you see the death to management painted on the wall in the overseer's office in 32.
Yeah,
And
and
management refers to
yeah,
the
Bud.
management of Vault Tech from 31.
Oh yeah, and
And
Bud,
the We Know the Truth.
Bud's who we will meet. I can't remember what episode he starts popping up in, but Bud is he's like he says something like what's going to save the world or what's going to do what, and then his answer is management. Like it's not X, Y, or Z,
Right.
it's management. And so so Vault 32 finds out, but it's like you have people who essentially killed each other over it. And so if Vault 33 got a whiff of it, but my thing is, okay, let's say that they did know. There's no way Hank and Betty don't clean that shit up just in
Right.
case something like this happens. So
Exactly.
it's like, okay, now I'm curious of how are they going to do this? So yeah, so I just found that whole thing very fascinating. Shet is like he just wants to stick his head back in the sand. Like he doesn't want anything
Yeah.
to
He's
do
like,
with it.
nope, let's go
Right.
home. I don't want to know anything about this. Okay, bye.
And it feels like Norm is very much like Dorothy, who just left Kansas and is now in this, like he has to go and find the wizard essentially, and he
Right.
does
Yeah.
find him. But okay, so now we're gonna go back to the super duper mart. And it's crazy. So, they go to the super duper mart and Cooper presses this thing. And I don't realize it until obviously this watch through, but it's like,
Right.
how does Cooper handle hearing his friend's voice? You
Right.
know
I
what I
said
mean?
that
Like,
same thing to
yeah.
Lake last night. I was like, how weird is it for him hearing his friend's voice coming out of
Mhm.
this robot? Like, how
Right.
weird is that for him?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, so he, like near mint condition, I was like, okay, Coop, whatever, whose fault is that?
That was so
Um,
funny.
And and the whole time, I should say, the whole time, Lucy thinks she's going to be sold as a sex slave. And I am almost
Right.
positive she could get more as a sex slave than as just for parts. Because once they get the
Right.
parts, she's useless. You can have sex a whole bunch of times for a long time.
Yeah.
But then he cuts off her ropes. He does not have to do this. He could have just sent her in tied up. And so I like to think, my little headcanon is that he did this because he doesn't know what's going to happen and he wants to give her a fighting chance. It's almost like he's testing her. You know what I mean? Like to
Right.
see how she's going to handle it. And
I circle back to Hades and Persephone and just like seeing how she's gonna handle this particular part of the underworld and navigating this. Like, how is she gonna handle it? Is she gonna handle it like a queen, or is she gonna screw it up?
right. And I love, so she kind of like looks back at him and he says, well, you have problems out here too. And to me, like, you could automatically interpret that as, if you don't go in there, I'm going to hurt you. And he insinuates that obviously with the gun, but I think he really means, if you don't get me this chem, I'm going to go feral. And that is going to be a problem for you. So you need to go in and do that. And once he's feral, he's not in control of himself. And so I like to think that he's kind of trying to protect her in his own little way, I mean, so
Right.
yeah, I like that he kind of pushes her, like he has to touch her a little bit. That's just my
Yeah.
thing. And the second she goes in, that's when he's like, he like, and then
Yeah. Like,
yeah,
he has that breath, he slumps, like he's been holding himself up and staying strong, and then the second she's inside, he lets go that tension and then he collapses.
he collapses.
Love that.
I know. And so,
But it's almost like the sexual tension was literally keeping that man propped up.
yeah, well, I think that he has to be, because number one, he doesn't quite trust her yet with his weakness, but she's going to change that in a couple of minutes. And then on top of that, like, he has to project himself a certain way. He doesn't want to show his vulnerability. Every time he starts coughing or he has to use the chem, I feel like that's when he gets the most snippy, because it's like it's reminding him that he isn't not that he's not human necessarily, but that he's
It
vulnerable.
reminds him that he's not invulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. And if he's trying to be a beast, which we see even with Roger, because like we see that he's literally eating this dead ghoul, he is becoming a quote unquote monster, a beast, or whatever. But even he has this vulnerability that he needs to take care of, or else he's going feral. And so I love that we see all of these ghouls are kind of locked up. Like, some are kind of human looking, some are, they have already turned. And then we see Martha, she essentially does the same thing that Roger did. Like, I'm Martha, I'm Martha.
Right.
And
My
I
name is
love that
Martha, and
callback.
she's
Yeah.
repeating it over and over. I love that. Like, she's trying to remind herself who she is.
Yes. And then we see like Snip Snip greet her and she turns, she's like, what the fudge? And I'm like, girl, yes, that's exactly what I would have done too. I was literally living and breathing Lucy there. I was like, what the fuck is that?
Exactly. I love it. That was such a cute moment. I thought it
I
was
know.
so precious.
And I believed her. Like, Ella is just so like perfect with, because sometimes when you have things like what the fudge, like they can come across as a little bit like
Hokey.
silly. Yeah, like as an adult saying it, because you're just like, you would say what the fuck, come on. But I believe it every time
Right?
Ella says it. Like, I believe
And that
her.
is like top tier.
Yeah.
acting.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you can make me believe that a grown-ass person would say what the fudge instead of what the fuck, like, kudos.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
But,
so
like, I have a sailor mouth problem, so
yeah.
that might just be me.
That's true. That's true. But I love again, Lucy thinks she's going to be a sex slave because, and but she's not. They're gonna just harvest her organs.
Her reaction to Snip Snip saying that, though,
Yeah.
was so genius. I loved everything about that whole exchange and, like, sewing the necrotic finger on her hand, like,
Oh yeah.
like, that is literally just to serve the Ghoulsy ship, okay? Because why are you gonna sew a necrotic finger on homegirl when you are about to harvest her organs?
Literally,
You don't
I
need
have that
that
question
finger.
in my notes. I was like, why are they sewing her up if they're about to take a chainsaw to her chest? Like, I don't
Right? Yeah,
understand that.
yeah, like, no. She
Oh
doesn't
man.
need that finger. That finger is there to, like, once again, remind us of the yin and yang
Oh yeah.
of Cooper and Lucy, and,
Oh
like,
yeah. Um, yeah, so okay. So at this point though, it's interesting because I'm curious if, and we'll never know, right? I'm curious if Cooper had the intention of getting the chem, but like he was gonna go in and save Lucy once he had the chem. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
right? I don't know either, and I don't know that Cooper knew what he was
Yeah,
gonna do.
I don't think he did either. But I like, and he could have been like, I'm not gonna go in there because my focus is Janie. I don't need this girl. I still like that he undid her hands, like to
Yeah, her
give her that
restraints,
chance.
and
Yeah,
did give her a fighting chance.
exactly. So then we kind of we see that she's kind of strapped down, and I love Snip Snip, just I love him so much. And we see that Lucy again, she is starting to become that badass. Like she's not going to take anything, and because we've seen this development across the first 3 episodes, we believe it when she kicks his sort of like saw out of the way, and
Right, and
it's
into her restraints, which was
yes.
genius, and then you see her doing the math in her head when she picks up the Abraxo draining fluid, and you're
Yep.
like, "Yeah."
Well, and on top of that, it's like this isn't her physical strength. This is all her cleverness and using the resources that she has available to her. So we come back out, but I love it because we get that flashback, or we get that scene of okay, the Radiation King TV, and it I swear it does it on purpose. And then it goes over to Martha, or she sees Martha and she wants to believe so badly that no, the humanity is still there. And so she basically holds Snip Snip hostage, and the guys are like, it's a fucking robot. And so she has to, it's like if it was an air conditioner, that would be a different story. But
As
yeah,
a
and
Southerner, I can fully understand that, though. Let me
yeah,
just say, if you were holding an air conditioner hostage, I would probably give you anything you wanted.
yeah. So at that point, she's like, I'm gonna leave. And they're like, okay, you can go. And she's like, no, but they're all coming with me. So they still don't argue. They're like, okay, and they let them out. And then it's only when Lucy's like, all of them. And even they're like, I don't think you understand. And she's like, do it. And that's when the ghouls start attacking. And again, this isn't Lucy being too stupid to live. Because of the foundation of how her character was built from episode 1, we genuinely believe she thinks she's doing the right thing. And
Right,
she genuinely sees, and this is why I love her character. And I think she's so good for the ghoul. She doesn't see monsters. Like she doesn't see them as monsters at all. Like she
right.
believes in who they are. It's only how they treat her. Like that is her contention with Cooper. It's not how he looks, it's how he treats her. And so they they basically get into a fight and they kill each other, which is kind of a skill that I wasn't expecting to see. And then you know, Cooper, or not Cooper, but Martha is like the last, she's like
Last
the
feral
last.
ghoul standing.
Exactly. And even Lucy's like, I know you're in there.
No, stop, decline.
That's okay. We've all been there. No, but it's like um she wants to believe so much that there's humanity in her. And she's at that point, and this is the perfect midpoint reversal for her, where she is now in a position where no one is going to save her here. She has to make the choice. Is she going to be killed, or does she kill? And, she makes the choice to kill.
Yep, and that's like the main reason why Lake loves her is
Yeah,
because she will make those decisions over and over again. She did in the vault in episode 1 and has ever since.
right. And so it's like, and I think this is a good example of Chekhov's gun is with the Roger scene first and foremost, and now with Martha, it's like they put Martha in specifically for a reason, and now they're going to fire the gun, so to speak, by putting her against Lucy. And she tries to reason with Martha in the same way she tried to reason with Cooper in episode 2 when they first meet for that first time. But she realizes that she can't be stupid. And so, like, if she was stupid, she wouldn't have even picked up the gun. She would truly believe that she could talk this person out of it. But Lucy is starting to learn. So she does pick up the gun, and she's only forced to kill Martha, when Martha kind of jumps and is going to attack her. And so in terms of plot structure, this is the perfect midpoint reversal for Lucy. And I will say, one of the reasons a lot of people do ship the Ghoul and Lucy together is that Cooper forced that lesson to be learned on Lucy. Like, without the Roger scene, she would not have learned that lesson. And that all comes from Cooper, because we see Cooper killing Roger in the most, I should say, in the softest of ways, if you want, like a mercy killing, like you called it. Like, and we
Yes.
don't expect that from someone like him. So I think that that was a really important moment. But what about you? What do you think
Right.
about
And
that
it's
scene?
going back to what you said in our earlier episodes about mirrors
Yeah.
in characters.
Yeah.
And like that was a really brilliant mirror moment
Yeah.
between these two characters. And like, how could we not ship these characters?
Right,
When
because
the writers are setting them up and mirroring them in these ways.
well, because Cooper has his own midpoint reversal, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and it only happens because of Lucy. So already we have, even in the plot structure, these characters are changing because of each other. But so we jump over back to the Vaulties, and this is where we find out that it's Norm and Lucy's mother's Pip-Boy that opened the gates specifically for the Raiders. And so we don't really understand at this point, if we're going in blind, like what the hell is even going on here.
Right. But then you think back to episode 1 and
Mhm.
Moldaver telling Lucy, you look just like your mother, and it makes
Oh
you
yeah.
go, hmm.
Yep. And she says it in a way where you can already tell that she liked the mother. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
Like the way that she
exactly.
tells Lucy that, and it makes me like it's curious that you bring that up, because as I'm obviously, now that I know what happens in episode 8 and all of those things, I'm like, why would you have all of these raiders potentially kill Lucy? Like, Monty is gonna kill Lucy if her dad doesn't step in. So if you really cared about Rose, or if you really respected Rose, why are you fine with her children being sort of like, like, a casualty in this war that has nothing to do with Lucy or Norm, and everything to do with Hank and the
I think it's
Baltics?
because she feels like instinctively that they are tainted by Hank and having been raised by Hank for so long. I think that's where Moldaver was coming from. I have no confirmation of that at all.
Right.
But like that's what my gut says is like she thinks that there's too much of Hank in them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense, especially because Rose has been gone for so long, and we'll find out why
Right.
later. But it's like, and yeah, I mean, there's so much shit that happens with these particular characters.
And also, I want to bring up something again that I saw while I was on Twitter and all these other amazing Ghoulsy people on Twitter pointing out incredible things. But a mirror moment between Moldaver and Hank actually is when speaking with Lucy, you can see the genuineness when Moldaver says, "You look just like your mother."
Mhm.
The only time Hank ever tells Lucy that she looks just like her mother is when she is being obedient and doing what he wants her to do.
It's interesting. I didn't even realize that. That's
And
interesting.
behaving in the ways that he wants her to behave. That is the only time he ever compares her to Rose, is when she is doing things that he wants her to do and behaving in ways that he wants her to behave.
That's crazy. And it's frustrating, like, as a woman, but anyway. Um, okay. So so I at this point I do not think that Vault 33 knew what happened to Vault 32.
I
And the
don't think they
only
did either.
and the
Betty and Hank
only
would have cleaned that shit up.
they would have cleaned it up and there would not be a marriage exchange. Like they
Right,
would not have
exactly.
knowingly have done that.
They would already have set up like some other people to move into there. They would have made some kind of shit up about some kind of disaster, and they would already have moved some people out of that vault and into 32 that are people under their control.
Yeah, because anyone could come
And they
upon
would have
that.
pulled another one of Bud's buds
Right.
out of the cryo chambers in Vault 31 to run Vault 32 yet
Yep.
again.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, so after that scene, we go back to the Super Duper Mart, and Lucy is essentially the last person standing. And I love this because she goes out, she finds Cooper passed out or close to,
Close
and
to it.
and go ahead, Chelsea, what happens?
And she has these vials of chems and she looks down at him and you can tell he has been hacking up stuff because there's this wetness in the dirt around his mouth, right? And she asks him, like, if you don't get these, you turn into one of those, referring to the ghouls and more specifically the feral ghouls. And he just like has so little energy at this point. He does like the barest hint of a nod. And so she gives him the chems like the queen she is and says, you know, basically like, I'm never gonna be like you,
I
golden rule,
may
motherfucker.
I may end up looking like you, but I'll never
Right.
be like you. Yep.
Right.
And
But I
yeah.
think she's already so much more like him than she even realizes. And it's
Yeah.
so funny that she says that, like, I may end up looking like you, but I'm never going to be like you. And then she gives him the chems and has her little golden rule, motherfucker. And I love that they made her say motherfucker here
Oh yeah,
in
because
this particular moment.
oh, I love it too. And again, it's that midpoint reversal. She does something she's never, well, who knows what she, but I just like to think this is something that's completely out of character for her because of Cooper. And we see Cooper use a motherfucker once he realizes the chems were broken in the first place. Like Walton, I believe that motherfucker, like I believed when he said it, like you could tell that he was angry. And so like I love this entire exchange because number one, I could only imagine what Cooper saw when he realized all of these ghouls were being set free. Like what it was going through his mind that like his little Vaulty is like releasing these sort of like, some of them are well, no, the feral ones stayed and they, but regular ghouls. And so I honestly feel like to Cooper, who sent her in basically to her death, is still looking out for other people and specifically for these ghouls. I think he's going to realize like he can't just poke her and she's going to turn into something. Like she
Right.
is
He can't underestimate her.
right.
And I feel like he's going to feel some type of way about it too.
I completely 100% agree with that. And I also think like, yes, at this point, Cooper is really, really weak. But what's interesting is if we see Martha and even Roger, before they turned feral, they were still relatively cognizant in terms of they weren't flat on the ground like Cooper was. So I'm not quite sure. And I don't know if it's just his age specifically, but like why Cooper is passing out versus just my name is Cooper or whatever.
Right.
I don't know what that's about, but it does tell me that like, and I don't know what kind of energy he has. So like, I'm just kind of like, he could have potentially, depending, I don't know. Like, I'm just like, okay, when he sees all of those ghouls, he had the opportunity to go in potentially if he was able to, right? But he doesn't. He just kind of, and so I'm wondering, like, was he okay to die in that moment? Like, because we don't see any fight from him. And I feel like that is relatively out of character. especially if his goal is to find, Janie or his family to get answers. It seems like very pitiful, and we don't typically see Cooper in a very pitiful way. So I don't know, again, if it's
Right.
just he needs that chem for that energy kind of thing, or if it's more than that, or if he's just at the point where it's like, there's really nothing I can do. Like, it's up to her essentially, like in terms of like, is she gonna survive or is she gonna die? And I almost think that because he's not pounding on the door like, give me my chem, I need my chem. It's almost like he's resigned himself to like, I'm just here, like I'm just lying down. I don't know. So
Right.
but then what's great is, okay, so Lucy walks off and they separate at this point. And again, it's like another sort of like, it's that midpoint where they're now going into different worlds. And Cooper comes back into the super duper mart and he looks at the carnage. And I feel like he's like, holy shit, Balti did this. Like, not
Right.
only did she free all of these ghouls, but the feral ones are dead. And the two dudes are also dead. And poor Snip Snip.
I feel so bad for Snip Snip. I would have like found a way to fix him and take him with me
30
because
seconds
I
of
will pack
silence for
bombs with
Snip Snip.
anything.
Just, yes, exactly. But so I think that Cooper sees this, and I think it's to your point of like, he maybe underestimated her a little bit. Like he either thought that she wouldn't be able to handle life in the underworld or in the wasteland, whatever you want to say. But when push came to shove, she handled it. And not only did she handle it, she saved his life. She could have
Right.
walked off, like stepped over him, walked off, and not done anything about it. But she gave him the vials so he could save himself. And I think that
She handled it
yeah,
in her own way, like the queen she is. Like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I am all here for shipping our radiation king and our atomic queen. Like, it's Hades and Persephone. That's what it's giving me, and I will ship it forever.
And this is the midpoint reversal for Cooper, because we see, so he kind of is getting high at this point on his chem, but then he sees a video and he puts in his old movie, and it's
A
the
man from Dead
which
Horse.
is the one where he wanted to be like, I would never kill somebody, and the director's like, well, too bad, we want to see a man be pushed to this extreme. And it's really poignant because at this point, Cooper, he won't even tell anyone his name. No one knows his name. He shoots down every single vault boy pig that he can. He's essentially hiding. I don't say hiding, but he refuses to go
He's
back to his
erasing
past.
his past self.
Yes, he's erasing his past self. And so the fact that he's sitting and watching himself, and he goes to that part in the movie, and it's like he puts his fingers up, and I don't know if you noticed that, but like when he says the little eulogy, he kind of like bends his trigger finger that Lucy bit off. And
Mhm.
he like, it's like he bends the glove, because obviously he's wearing gloves, and it's like he remembers that, like, it, he remembers her. I like to think, like and so it's kind of like Lucy had just saved his life. And so now he, instead of destroying this video of him, instead of, completely tearing it apart, he decides to like watch it. And it's like, I'm not saying he's necessarily embracing his past at this point, but he's reminding himself of who he used to be
Right.
before all of this happened. And it's because
And
Lucy decides to save his life.
exactly, she decided to save his life. And I love that we get that reminder of the self-fulfilling prophecy
Mm-hmm.
from that that movie when he was filming that, the feo fuerte y formal. Like,
Why don't you tell it? Because I know we posted it on our TikTok, but I don't think that I don't remember if we actually discussed it or not. So why don't you?
I don't think we have discussed it.
But
But
what is
yeah,
the eulogy? What does it mean, essentially?
I've got to get the order right in my head. Like, it was,
Here, I have my phone. Let me pull it up on TikTok really quick.
yeah, pull it up and like, because
Okay. So
so he was ugly, strong, and had dignity. Is that right? Is that the order?
Yes, he was ugly, strong, and had dignity. Yeah.
And had dignity. That's what I thought, but I wasn't 100% sure. Okay. So yes, that is what the eulogy from the movie is. And like it becomes about Cooper. And you can actually interpret it several different ways, which was discussed on our TikTok.
Yeah.
But in my head, the way I'm interpreting it is he sees himself as ugly now, like he's lost his
Yeah.
Hollywood movie star looks.
Yeah.
But he is still strong and
Right.
he does still have dignity
Yeah.
in his own bitter, hard way. But like you've got to be bitter and hard in the wasteland
In
to
the wasteland.
survive. And I just love that, like, when we saw that line earlier in the series, it didn't hit me that that eulogy was really about him
Right.
until later. And then I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible writing.
Right. And I think that he's watching himself as who he used to be. So before he became quote unquote ugly, and when he was the good guy doing bad things. And now what is he? Is he still that good guy? And I think he would say, no, I'm the bad guy doing bad things. And this is who I have turned into. And so I just think that both of those characters had these midpoint reversals of Lucy learned a lesson that sometimes you have to kill, like in order to survive. Like sometimes you have to mercy kill, and this is going to look at, like, this will be a mercy kill, because these people, as much as we want to think that they have retained their humanity or are human, they aren't. And so for Cooper, it was like sometimes you have to kind of be soft. You have to remember your own humanity in order to survive. So it's like both of them had to have each other to learn this lesson. And so without it, without each other, they aren't going to learn these lessons. And I think that this is another reason why you and I ship this so much. And I think it's so telling that Max isn't even part of this episode. And that's not to say Max isn't important or that he doesn't have his own character arc, because he does. But I feel like this is the A story. And our two main characters are Lucy and they are Cooper, because so much of their story mirrors each other. And Max is a very important character, but his story is completely different. And I think that that's where your Gaston villain arc comes in, because it is very different. Whereas Cooper and Lucy's are very much a mirror of each other's. They're both searching for their family. Before this, they were kind of ignorant, naive. They trusted the people they loved or were close to, and they both got that betrayal. And so in terms of writing a romance, and even if you're writing a thriller or a mystery or urban fantasy, like with a romantic subplot, mirroring is so important, because this is how you can kind of predict what characters are going to end up together. And the reason why you have Chelsea and me doing a lot of crack shipping is because the writers in these like mainstream pop culture things, they don't have characters get together that should have gotten together. And to go back to Raylo could have worked really, really well, because you had two characters who potentially could have mirrored each other, where they're both trying to find their identity within this, world. But because of how they wrote, especially Kylo Ren, and the decisions, like in terms of, once they killed Han Solo, for me, like he had to be a bad guy. Like I don't think, knowing who your audience is, you can redeem yourself from that at all. Like, in my opinion,
I have been in love with Han Solo since I was in diapers. And like at that point, when Han Solo is dead, I am done.
Well, and it's like, really, that's how Han Solo is going to go out, or even like that's how Luke Skywalker is going to go out. Like, so these writing choices didn't make any sense. And so so the Fallout writers have set this up so well. And so like, and to be fair, yes, you can have mirroring characters without it necessarily needing to be a romantic plot, but it works so well, especially as a romantic plot. I love it. It hits me harder than two friends having a
Right.
mirroring plot, or even um a villain and a protagonist, like sort of like the Kylo Ren Rey stuff. Like just the love interests having that mirroring plot, especially as enemies to lovers, it's just chef's kiss. I love it, and I really hope that they follow through with it, you know?
I hope they do too. I hope that they have the bravery to see something through like that, despite the fact that there are people out here on the internet who are like, "Please kill yourself for shipping this." Like,
Well, yeah, and that's just to go back to our rule of like ship and let ship. Like, who cares? You
yes,
know, like we're not gonna judge you for whatever your kink is, whatever your ship is. And I think that that's why the dark romance books are just so popular, is because we're literally trying to build communities with other readers who have those same kinks or who have those same love for tropes, and who aren't going to be judged by it, you know? And I think
right.
that and I love that. And that's what, you know, I think me and you want to do more of, is bring that into the mainstream and into the pop culture. Not necessarily because we're saying, oh, yeah, I want a stalker as my boyfriend in real life, but to be like, this is a healthy, cathartic way to explore these fantasies, the same way people do in video games. Like if you're playing Call
Yep.
of Duty, you don't want to just go kill everybody, but you're living out that fantasy of being a soldier, and like what would it be like if you were, what choices would you make if you were, and just it's a very sort of like healthy way to experience that.
Right. And well, like
So
the dark romance space in general is such a safe space
yeah.
for people to express themselves. And for the lighter, cleaner, fluffier spaces to be so angry at us for shipping such a certain thing really kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth a little bit, and I'm like, you that's something you might want to examine about yourself.
Well, and I mean, I don't like, I just think that like I know that the sweet romance, they have their stuff, and I know a lot of them aren't judgmental, but I just also feel like everyone should just, we don't need to, you know, as long, in my opinion, as long as everyone is of consenting age in whatever fantasy world, modern world, whatever, if everyone's a consenting adult. And I mean, in dark romance, even if you're not, if they still kind of, you know, like it a little bit, you have dub con,
Right.
non con, and it's just your, I just think that like, who hurt you? Like,
Right.
why do you need to shit on things like this? You know,
Exactly. Like, live and let live, love and let love, ship and let ship. That is
yeah,
our energy here.
right.
And like, we are allowed to like dark things just as much as people who don't like that are allowed to not like that.
Absolutely. And I would never make the assumption that everyone is on board. Like, you know, my family makes fun of me because I always, like, I would say 95% of the time I'm always rooting for the bad guy. And, you know, it's just, I just think that like I don't want, like, I like this makes me happy. This brings me joy. It has
Right.
nothing to do with you. So why do you feel the
Exactly.
need to like shit on it? And so I think the world would be a happier place if like we could all just crack ship in our own fandoms without feeling the need to shit on it. It's one thing to have a healthy dialogue of, like if we brought on like a Max Lucy shipper and they were like, here's why we ship this, and we could just have an open conversation about like maybe they saw some things that we didn't necessarily see because we're fangirling over Walton Goggins, and we're automatically, he is our default, okay, who are we shipping him with kind of person. I have no
Right.
problem having those conversations because I think that it really does help us see different perspectives. And in terms of writing, like, okay, what did they see that I missed that other readers might, you know, see that I don't know? But if all you're going to do is insult my ship or insult the characters, or my biggest issue, like what I don't like is when it starts to turn like judgmental in terms of like, well, he's way too old for her, or just he's abusing her, or like things like that. And I'm just like, no, we're not going to go there, because if you could have a mainstream ship like Kylo Ren and Rey, and he was literally abusing her too, and that's acceptable, like you can't now shit on this one. Like you don't necessarily have to agree with it, and I'm fine if you do not think a man should treat a woman in this way, no matter what the context, no matter what the story, that's fair, and that is perfectly fine. But what
Right.
I think so many people forget, and this is the frustrating part, is okay, what world are we living in here? Like, this is a wasteland. We are not going to have the same moral, like, society rules as we do, today. And they're literally exchanging teeth. People are literally being sold, into sex slavery. And obviously that's happening today. I'm not saying it's not, but it's like, so there are literally people called the ghouls. Are you saying then that they should just not be, like, they don't deserve love because now, like, what are your rules here now? Because I don't think people are going to, like, look at even the vault. Oh, you can have sex with your cousin, you just can't procreate with them. So it's like, we the rules are different, and if we're immersing ourselves in our story, we have to accept these rules. Because if you come in and judge people for liking the shit because it goes against our society's norms, then you need to get out of the world completely, because you have to accept that these are different rules altogether in the first place. So that's just
Yep.
my thing. And it's like, it's just like the age gap thing. Look, again, Lucy is in her mid-20s. She is a consenting adult. You don't have to like age gap. That's fine. But you can't tell Lucy that you can't infantilize. Say the word, Chelsea, because I can't seem to get.
Infantilize her.
Yes, you can't do that, because she is a woman and we are allowed to have autonomy over our choices in men. And if you don't like him, fine. But
Right.
you can't say we're not allowed to have
But
it.
okay. The golden rules of our podcast are
Right.
ship and let ship, live and let live, love and let love. Like that's the energy that we have here, and I think that's important in all of fandom. And like I'm not going to spew hate at anybody for
No.
shipping Lucy with somebody other than Cooper.
Right.
But I would also like that same courtesy in return.
Right. And I don't want to be judged as a person because of my ships. And that's happened to
Right.
me in a lot of the crack ships that I've had. And it's really frustrating, because it's like, I don't understand why you care so much. Like, these are literally like fictional characters. Like, they're not real. Just because I like something that you don't necessarily like, it doesn't make me a bad person. And
Right, exactly. And
yeah,
that that applies to our genres
right.
also with
Oh, for sure.
dark romance, because I have seen a lot of hate thrown at women who read dark romance.
Yeah.
And like you don't have to like it, but you also don't get to shit on people who do.
Oh, and like, just fun fact, the majority of women are reading dark romance. They may say they're not, but I will tell you that they probably are, because of just the amount of money that genre is making. Do, I just think that, like, a lot of women, maybe not, they are not going to come out and say it, but they like that stuff. They want that stuff. And I think that this is why things like this need to be pulled out into the mainstream. Like, and it's frustrating, because you had canonical um ships, like, for example, like Joker and Harley, right? And I was so intrigued by the Suicide Squad, because I love Harley Quinn and I ship Joker and Harley. But again, it's that morality of, well, Joker is bad because he abuses Harley. And obviously, like, yes, abuse is bad. We're not saying that. It's just, it would have been really, really interesting to have gotten character arcs, you know, around that relationship, and not to just have the morality police be like, well, he's bad because he did X, Y, and Z, and just, anyway, that's just my little contention with that. But yeah,
Oh, I feel you 1,000%.
yeah. And it's just, I mean, and I just think that, again, just because I like Cooper and Lucy doesn't mean I don't like Max. I think that Max is a great character. I love the banter between him and Thaddeus. I love like
Right?
what's gonna happen in the next few episodes.
I kind of ship him and Thaddeus a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
I
Just
just
like
think it's
throwing that out
interesting.
there.
You throw that out there, I'm not gonna catch it because I thought he was a dick to Thaddeus and Thaddeus deserves better, but that's just me. And
Okay, fair.
no,
Absolutely fair.
but then you're probably like, Heather, Cooper literally throws a lasso around Lucy. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why I accept it. And my husband's like, why do you accept this and not this? And I'm just like, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't understand myself and I know it's a hypocrite. I can call myself out and being very hypocritical. It's just the way shipping is
Yep.
sometimes. Like I can't
It,
explain
it
it.
is. And like it's okay if I like kind of ship them in the back of my head. But I do feel that Thaddeus does deserve better. And I would honest to God just love to see Maximus in his villain era.
Yeah.
Just like
Well,
I would
and
love to see him take over the entire Brotherhood of Steel
we
and like
never
run that
know
shit.
what other characters are gonna come from like in season 2. You know what I mean? And so it's like
Right.
I would love to sort of like, you know how Lucy is sort of like, okay, she drinks the water. So we know Persephone moment, she's never going back to the vault. I would love for Max to have a moment like that for himself because I feel like he wants to go to a vault. He wants that safety. He wants that protection. But I would love for him to sort of like take the pomegranate seeds and realize he can never go to that. And it would be so interesting if a character helps him decide that, like a woman or a man, I'm not judging, but like someone helps him decide that like I can't go back there and kind of helps push him into that villain era as well.
I would like for it to be a taste of real power
Yeah.
that does that for him and that pushes him further on that arc where he could be like, I just think he could be a fantastic villain. He could play it so well. He would be such a charismatic villain,
Yeah.
also. Like, it would be absolutely fantastic to watch.
Well, and
I
think of
just
the
am so here for that.
situations. Oh, think of the situation. Like, think of how disappointed Lucy would be in him. And then Cooper would be so mad that Lucy even cares. And
Right.
just
I would
Max
love
would,
to see him get huffy, though. Like, maybe just because I like seeing Walton Goggins get huffy,
mm.
but I think that would be fabulous to see
I need him to be like,
Hooper get all huffy.
I need him to be possessive over Lucy. I need to see that.
Yes.
I mean, I already kind of see that, he literally bit her. Anyway,
Yeah, she
um,
bit his finger off and he cut hers off, and like that, he took possession of that piece of her, and that is his trigger finger now, and I love that so much.
I know, I think it's, so I read like other fanfic and like some of the stuff is like, it's obviously there's going to be some sex in it. And it's just interesting, like the poignancy of when he like touches her with her own finger. And that's how she recognizes that. Cause at this point, after season 8, she doesn't realize that it's her finger. And so
Right.
like these scenes that I really can't wait to see. I can't wait to see the divorce, like the actual flashbacks in the divorce. I can't wait to see when when Lucy realizes who Cooper is, like Cooper Howard.
God, I am living for that, please.
And I can't wait to see when Lucy realizes that Cooper sewed on her own finger. Like I think that this is gonna be
That's gonna be so good.
so good. And I'm very curious actually to see what happens when Max finds Cooper and Lucy, because I get the sense that Max is going to feel extremely betrayed, especially how they left
Mhm.
things. And Cooper is going to be very possessive. He's going to write it off like, I need her to get to Hank, but I think that he's going to be very possessive. So,
Yes.
which
I
which
need
I'm
for
living
that to
for.
happen
I'm
for
living for it.
reasons.
Yeah. So anyway, that was episode 4. Do you have any word on in terms of story structure and the midpoint and for our own writing, or what we can incorporate from the show and put it in our writing?
I just think it's so important to remember that at that midpoint, when you're halfway through the story, you do need to have your character learn something, or something needs to change for them.
Mhm.
Like, they need to be on an uneven keel, they need to have to pivot, like, there has to be something that has them staggering a little bit and having to back up and regroup.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think that the examples that we gave between Lucy and Cooper were just perfect for the genre of the show, but also for if we're getting what we want, the relationship that they are eventually going to have together. If you're, for example, if you're writing a romance, a lot of the midpoints can be sex for the first time. And if you have insta love, which is when your characters kind of hook up or fall in love early on, a lot of the midpoint is the realization that this is more than physical for me. And it could be just as simple as that little realization. But like that is a midpoint reversal where, they're thrust into this new world at that trigger moment and they kind of go on, but then something really, really forces them to realize like, oh shit, I'm like in it. And we take once we're in the midpoint, we're now in that third, depending on how you view acts, if you view 3 acts or 4 acts, we're in that third act, or we're in that second half of act 2, and now the characters need to get more proactive versus they're simply reacting to things. And so we're going to see that in the next couple of episodes between all 3 of our characters. Because if we remember, Max and Thaddeus are the ones with the head. And Lucy and the ghoul are still looking for the head. So yeah, so that was episode 4, guys. We are really, really excited to keep going into episode 5, and we will see you guys next week. Chelsea, what do we want them to comment with?
All right. What are your predictions for season 2 of Fallout on Prime?
Yep, what's gonna happen
in the comments?
Yep. All right. It was so good to talk about episode 4. Yeah, we'll see you in the comments. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Bye.